everybody. I hope that you are all doing well and welcome to the fourth video in our 2021 Colorwork Knit Along installments. And today we are going to be talking about finishing. Finishing is an important step in your knitted garment, and it just overall just makes a really beautiful piece in the end. And so I'm going to swap my camera and we're going to talk about how weaving in your ends can be done with a Colorwork knitted garment. Alrighty, so I have my finished hat here. Isn't this color combination wonderful? So I've got my finished hat here and I've got my darning needle all ready to go. And so I'm just going to flip my work inside out. So with Colorwork, I kind of like to work from the top down. You can always start from the bottom up. I just find that if I secure this crown float or working yarn first, it just makes everything feel like it goes so much faster. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to thread the tail of my yarn through here. And then I'm going to adjust the hat so that it sits slightly more flat so I can see it like this. And sometimes I like to get my hand up under there and kind of push that out. So my number one goal when I am weaving in the ends is to ensure that I've got a nice tight group of stitches there and that I don't have a hole that is visible. So my working yarn was brought through the stitches from here and around. So I'm just going to keep with that pattern as I'm weaving in my ends. So what I'm going to do is this is where this was the last stitch that it was attached to. So I'm just going to go into the one directly next to it. For the crown, I really enjoy just going around and really just securing my stitches. I'm not really trying to hide anything because it is the top of a hat, and so I am really just grabbing those stitches with my darning needle. I'm just grabbing that stitch and I'm pulling it through, and my yarn will not be visible on the right side of my work here. And so we're just gonna kind of turn and adjust, and I'm gonna grab that guy next. And it really is just bit by bit, stitch by stitch, just so that it's nice and secure. So once you've gotten that wound all up, once you've gotten kind of a few circles in, you are free just to snip it. And it might come in this way. You are then free to snip it as close to the fabric as possible. And if I just quickly flip it to the right side, you can see that that is nice and beautiful and very even, and you can't see my thread on the other from the other side poking through, which is what we want. I've wove in my top end, and now I am just going to snip. I like to weave in my ends before blocking, and to ensure that I don't accidentally have anything slip through, I like to leave at least 2 inches of my yarn after it's woven in. I just like to leave that hanging there. I'll block it, and then I'll go through once everything is washed and blocked, and I'll officially snip that in. So that's just my little tip. You don't have to do it that way. Like I said, it's just what works for me. So now I want to work on my color work, and thankfully there weren't too many color changes in this pattern. I have knit some where you change your colors every row, every other row, and so I've had some hats that have at least 40 ends, which can feel a little bit overwhelming. But all I'm going to do is I'm just going to start from the top down. So I start with like my hayloft here. I'm going to weave him in. And then I'm gonna go, and it looks like my fossil is next to be woven in, and then my foothills, and then it hops down to farther down the line. So I am just gonna kind of gently pull on that to open up those stitches, grab the hayloft that needs to be woven in, thread that through, and get to work. So I like, when I work on my stitches, when I'm weaving in midway or at the beginning of the round, I like to kind of just tension my stitch a little bit, and then I like to flip it and check to make sure. So here's the stitch that I'm pulling on, and it looks like it's the same tension as the other one. So I think I'm good to start weaving in my ends. And all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna follow the stitch. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna come down under here. All right, I'm gonna come down under. I'm gonna loop back up, down, and I'm just gonna keep in that style. So I've gone down. Now I want to come back up. Come over, come down, and we're just gonna repeat that. The wonderful thing about 100% wool yarns is you don't actually have to weave in a ton of stitches when you're weaving in your ends, because they will naturally stick. Now with superwash yarns, you do want to use, you want to go as far as you possibly can with the end that you have, but something really woolly like Brooklyn Tweed or our Yorkshire Medley yarns or any of the Kilbourne woolen yarns that we stock, they're really wonderful and they will stick. A good friend of mine, Rachel Brockman, actually taught me that tip. She's like, oh, you only need to go like 3 stitches maximum. And that was when I learned to fall in love with finishing, because before I had always been told, oh, go as long as you can, get as many things going. Top of the hat, when you want like a lot of structure, that's definitely important to make sure that you kind of get as much going as you can. But just here on the sides, it's not that big of a deal. So I'm just going to tension my white stitch here. I'm going to flip to check that everything looks smooth, and it does. I don't see any inconsistencies there. And then I am just going to find a stitch to follow. That's the important thing. I'm going to want to follow this stitch down here. So I'm going to come down. And then I want to come up through. Down. Pull on it just a little bit, and let's flip this over and see if it worked. Oh, look at that. You can't even tell. Lovely. So you're just going to repeat this the whole way down, and you're going to snip your ends. You can either leave your ends or snip your ends once you're done with them, to like let you know like, hey, I completed this one. So for example, I did my hayloft, so I'm just going to trim him, put him aside. So like he's kind of short, so now I know like I've finished him. Done the fossil, I'm gonna trim him, move him aside, and so now I know that I've got 2 out of the remaining ones done. So I'm going to keep working away on this, and then I will show you my preferred method of blocking hats. All right, welcome back. So we're going to be talking about blocking. So I have finished knitting my hat. I've woven in the ends to the point where it's time to block them, and then once it's all dry, I'm going to snip these even closer so it sits all flush. And I've even added my sweet wee pom. You can find out how to make a pom-pom in my video posting on Friday. You can block without a pom-pom and then add it later. Just because I was filming everything at the same time, I just attached it, and I've got that thread in there as well. So to block your hat, what you want to do is you're going to want to fill your sink with lukewarm to warm water, and actually I'm going to let that get warm for a little bit. Okay, so now that the water's running warm, I'm just gonna plug my sink, and then we're just gonna add in a few batches of soap. I'm using an orange ginger dish soap. You can totally use anything with lavender or tea tree as a natural moth repellent. And then all I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna take my beautiful hat. I'm just gonna gently submerge it in this warm, soapy water. It's not boiling hot, and if it does get boiling hot, I would adjust your water a little bit. You don't wanna scald the fibers. So I'm just gonna let this baby sit and soak. And I like to get my hats fully saturated, and so once you have it sitting in here for about 30 minutes, you can come back and drain it, and we'll go on to the next part. All right, we've let this one soak for a good amount of time, and now what we're gonna do is we're gonna drain our sink or our basin, and then we're gonna fill it up with the same temperature water for a rinse. And we're just gonna let that soak for probably another 10 minutes just to get any suds out of it. So we'll fill this up and come back. All right, so he has been soaking, and I'm just gonna drain the water again. And if it doesn't get sucked down the drain, oh my goodness. And now I'm gonna get a towel, and I'm just going to lay my knitted hat on that towel and just gently press the excess water out of it. This is a super important step to make sure that you don't distort your stitches. I'm gonna open him up. Oh, look at that. Look how lovely that is. My pom-pom is a bit disheveled, but he'll fluff up once it dries. So I am going to go lay this flat on a non-porous surface so that it will evaporate really beautifully, and we will be all set to wear and love this amazing fleet hat by Tin Can Knits, knit up in Brooklyn Tweed Shelter.